So welcome everyone. Thank you very much for joining this session on best practices in anti-cheating, which is one of the main themes of this conference this year, and obviously has become much more of a critical issue this year with the rise of online chess. This will be a kind of a free-flowing panel discussion, I hope. We have a number of guests that are represented from different parts of the chess world. I'm Macauley Peterson, who have been a chess professional for about 12 years. And I guess my first connection with the topic is as one of the early players on the ICC, on the Internet Chess Club in the mid to late 90s. That kind of led me from a player to a media professional, and have worked for a number of chess companies, including Chess24 and ChessBase. After that have obviously had to deal with the issue of online cheating from a very early stage. So I'll just be facilitating this conversation today, and joining us we have from Chess24, Sanjoy Bannerjee, who's an IT product manager and has been with the Chess24 since April. Shohreh Bayat, who is the first female Category A international arbiter from Asia, and was the chief arbiter of the World Chess Championship, the Women's World Chess Championship in 2020, and now lives in London. And Salomėja Zaksaitė, the chairperson of the FIDE World Chess Federation Fair Play Commission. David Cordover, founder of Tornelo.com. And I believe we will be joined perhaps by Marty Grund from ICC, who will be filling in for his colleague Ruy Moura, who unfortunately couldn't make it at the last minute. So if just to start, I'd like to pass it over to each of you in turn to introduce yourself a bit more, and also give us 1 or 2 minutes on your chess background and your connection to the topic of anti-cheating. Why don't we start with Sanjoy?
Afternoon, folks, or morning or evening if you're from elsewhere around the globe. So as Macauley very kindly introduced, I'm a IT product manager at Chess24, and I've been a passionate competitive chess player for more years than I care to remember, though of modest ability, shall we say. Chess24 was not the only kind of interface on which I've played as an online chess player. I've throughout the years probably played on all of the platforms represented here, and many others besides. And my joining the company coincided with the escalation of the pandemic, and it was apparent at the outset, as early as April, that this was going to be a huge topic for anyone involved in the development of online chess platforms. Ourselves, our competitors and peer platforms all had existing pipelines, but we have recognized that the migration of a lot of over-the-board chess activity has meant that the bar needs to be raised. So that's where this topic has exercised myself and my colleagues over the last 6-7 months.
All right, thanks. Let's continue on, I guess, with Shohreh, please.
Hello, everyone. It's very nice to see you all. My name is Shohreh Bayat, as Macauley kindly announced and introduced me somehow. I'm an international arbiter from England right now, because I'm Asian, but right now I live in England, and my federation is also England. I have been involved in 3 Olympiads and 1 online Olympiad as well, and 3 Women's World Chess Championship. And also I'm a woman FIDE master and consider of the FIDE Arbiters Commission as well. And it's a great honor to be here today to discuss with all of you about anti-cheating. Thank you,
Shohreh. Salomėja.
Hello, my name is Salomėja Zaksaitė. I'm from Lithuania. I have been playing chess for many years from my childhood, since my childhood, and then I turned to scientific aspects of chess, of cheating, and I guess 6 years ago I joined the Anti-Cheating Commission, which was renamed to Fair Play Commission in FIDE. So my experience is both from the player's point of view, from a researcher's point of view, and currently from the point of view of an officer. Sometimes it is very complicated to handle these different perspectives, but I try my best to combine all these.
Thank you. Over to you, David.
Good evening. Yes, I started my chess career as a junior. I was the Australian junior chess champion in 1996 and ran a chess academy or scholastic program, quite a large scholastic program through most of Australia. In March of this year, when COVID came along, our entire schools program was sort of wiped out, and we needed to move online. We didn't see a platform that would provide the same sort of experience for players as an over-the-board experience in tournaments. So we built an online game server onto the back end of our pairings program, and we've now got this platform Tornelo, which is designed for arbiters to run what we call arbiter-led scheduled events. Obviously, the very first event that we ran, I was extremely naive about the aspect of players getting assistance during their games, and we learned very quickly that it was a real thing. And it's been an interesting journey over the last 6 months to try and understand this problem a little bit more deeply, and then start coming up with solutions to the problem.
All right, thank you. I do see a Martin among the participants, but I don't know if that's Marty Grund. If it is, please say hello. If not, he may not have in fact made it. So we have a slightly smaller panel than than initially telegraphed, but that's fine. We'll have plenty of time, and we'll have plenty of time to take questions, which we will using the regular chat window. So you can put those in there, and then I will keep an eye on that, and we can bring some of the audience into the discussion later on. To start with, let's just kind of lay a bit of the background for the topic before the age of online chess, the online chess explosion. I guess anyone really can chime in, but perhaps Shohreh, as an arbiter, how widespread of a problem do you feel, what's your impression, that cheating in chess is in general in the tournaments that you've done or from your discussions with colleagues and so on?
Actually, I believe that this is a serious matter right now. And if we compare some tournaments with like 20 years ago, we will see that the cheating matter now is serious, while like 20 years ago we had not these issues because engines were not that sophisticated. And yeah, I compare tournaments, and I've been involved in many tournaments like World University Chess Tournament, FIDE Online Olympiads, and World Youth Chess, World Youth, which now is going to be now is organizing. And in all events, unfortunately, we had some players who are using engines. And actually, except that, I was involved in other events, and so far I haven't been in any tournament that it was totally clear, unfortunately. So we know that this is a serious matter, and arbiters take it so seriously. We are trying to use some measures to fight with cheating. And regarding my point of view as an arbiter, we divide our job to 3 different sections. One of them is avoiding cheating, which we have started before the tournament. So we ask players to be involved in some place like Zoom or equivalent, and having their camera on, having their microphone on, and share their screens. And then during the game and after the game, our job is different. I don't know if you want me to explain them now or later.
Yeah, let's come back to that in more detail. Of course, the what the best practices are of the state of today. But Salomėja, do you consider the chess community as a whole as something that is more prone to cheating or less compared to other sports, would you say? And who are the main stakeholders that are coming to the table with the biggest concerns in your view?
Well, it's a kind of philosophical question. A very, very big survey is needed to answer to it fully, but at least from my, so to speak, broad perspective, I think that chess players do not differ so much from compared to other sports. Just our form of cheating is kind of specific, because in our sports we have doping, we have other kind of deviant behavior, but probably the closest form of cheating is technology doping, because technology doping is already not anabolics and not food supplements. It is kind of a vehicle that, for example, facilitates the bike. So it is artificial. It is really not about food and not about supplements. So if I was asked to draw maybe the most straightforward parallel between cheating in chess using software, I would probably draw this parallel to technology doping. But of course, I cannot say more about comparisons as to why chess players are more prone to cheating or less prone to cheating. I guess David Smerdon today already presented some very, very fresh and interesting insights. He carried out the survey of 700 people. Okay, maybe a bit more, but it was about 700. So it is maybe better to ask behavioral scientists or psychologists about this, or sociologists, but probably I am not the most proper representative to answer this question.
Well, one of the more unfortunate consequences of the popularity of Queen's Gambit is some people are probably under the misconception that tranquilizers or some other drugs might be helpful in your chess play, which I think most of the chess professionals are rather skeptical about. But yes, technological doping is a good way of terming this. And since the beginning of online chess, there's been the potential for cheating once engines became strong enough that it was, by the time of the turn of the century, let's say, with early online platforms, this became a problem. And I remember the early attempts to police this were very manual. So you had individual arbiters looking at games usually that were flagged by users, reported by users. So yeah, for those of you with experience on online chess in general, how do you see that process having evolved from the early days to now? I don't know, Sanjoy, if you follow this, or David, you want to jump in on this?
Yeah. So yeah, I think the process for dealing with this comes in a number of stages. There is no, in my opinion, silver bullet that we can say, okay, we're going to solve this problem. And I also don't think that we should be trying to abolish cheating altogether. Actually, there's a number of things, and it goes back to to behavioral psychology and criminal psychology, and trying to understand why people are doing this. My first thing would be to say that instead of calling it cheating, we should be calling it receiving unfair assistance, and starting to try and get on the same side and make it less combative with the players themselves. Because Only a very, very small percentage of the unfair assistance that's being taken is done so maliciously and with forethought. Most of it is what I would suggest to be just, you know, kind of almost accidental. It's too easy. It's too easy to do. So there are in our opinion, 3 stages that the arbiter community needs to take. The first is to provide an environment that is conducive to fair play, right? And our objective should always be to build trust amongst the players, not to catch cheaters. You know, I've got no interest in catching somebody who's cheating in any of my tournaments. We have an interest in building a community of people who are playing fairly. We have an interest in behavior change and modification, if we can provide some early intervention, if there are people who are getting assistance. But you know, in general, the environment is the first step. And so if you can provide an environment that is conducive to fair play, that's a really big step in providing, I guess, sort of some of those psychological aspects. The second stage is, as Shohreh has mentioned, you know, some of this supervision. Supervision is, I think, of kind of limited, you know, efficacy. You know, watching somebody on camera or doing screen share and listening to their microphones. You know, I've sat and watched somebody who is cheating for, you know, 2 hours over the course of 2 games and not been able to identify it. You know, using those supervision methods. So I think there's some limited efficacy there, but I think it's still it's important for people to know they're being supervised. And then the third phase is that verification that, in fact, the game was played fairly. And you can do that afterwards with some of the statistical analysis tools that exist and comparison with the player's expected performance and with the actual performance that happened in the game. So I would say environment, supervision, and then verification as a process to go through. And you know, a lot of it is about building communities of players because, of course, bad behavior, whether that's online or antisocial behavior in the real world, will always happen more frequently in groups of strangers than it will amongst people who know and care for one another. So if we can build communities of players, then that goes a long way to solving this as well.
Yes, indeed. As David Smerdon intimated, as Salomėja intimated about David Smerdon presentation earlier, the survey data that we do have indicates that there's a much higher propensity for using technology assistance in online chess than in over-the-board chess. On this question of the statistical approach versus supervision approach, perhaps on the statistical approach, one of the things I'm curious about, perhaps Sanjoy can speak to this, is the limitations of the and what is known about the limitations of the effectiveness of using only the moves in comparison to, let's say, engines as a means of trying to detect the computer assistance. And do we have any reason to think that this has dramatically improved in recent years?
Yeah, it's a great question, and all of the panelists and many of the audience today will be familiar with the work of Professor Kenneth Regan, who's been working obviously for a long time on his way of identifying the statistical likelihood of certain trends in terms of comparison of users' moves and engine for second and third lines. Now, you know, the chances of winning the national lottery in the UK are 14 million to 1. But does that mean 14 million to 1 is an astronomical probability? Well, no, of course, it depends on how many people are buying tickets. So what you're calling out in a statistical analysis is there a departure from what you would expect to see as a normal distribution? And of course, Professor Regan's work is built on, you know, sound statistical models for standard deviations from means and so on. And all of the work he has done, I think, is exceptionally helpful both for over the board and online chess. Many of the online tournaments I've played on other platforms, the prizes will not be distributed for a period of time until those moves have been analyzed. Well, the key point for me is that we're talking about one parameter, and we live in an age, a tech age, where artificial intelligence and algorithms, static algorithms and learning algorithms are capable of factoring in numerous and complex different parameters. So, you know, to call out some of these, it could be time control. You know, if it's a quick game, you're less likely to make moves that are accurate with engine first lines. A player's rating is another. What's termed opportunism. You know, how likely are you to see a winning tactic? Time distribution and clustering. You know, if you spend a long time thinking about an idea, it may be likely that you'll play the subsequent moves quicker. And you can actually go further and further, because I think one of the things that's very interesting to me is that, well, let me give you an anecdote that illustrates this very well. I was watching one of the shows that Jan Gustafsson at Chess24 was doing, one of the Banter Blitz shows. And for him, he is able to sense when there is something fishy about a game without necessarily being able to articulate the reasons why. And that's because his experience at an elite level over many years means that just the way that he uses pattern recognition for his own chess, he can sense this combination of complex factors that gives him a sixth sense that something isn't right. And we have a real opportunity in a tech age to be able to make sure that we can take into account that complex array of factors. But I think if this comes back to David's point though, what is our actual aim? Do we want to simply catch and punish? Arguably we don't, because the average chess player isn't necessarily going to understand what lies behind the curtain around a sanction against someone who has used technical assistance. Instead, the cloud of opprobrium may discourage them from playing online chess. It's a question of false positives or the fear of false positives. So we have to be careful that we understand that by upping our game in terms of detection of technical assistance, that we also have a PR dimension to manage as well. There are different ways you can go with that. So for example, cycling in the popular perception is considered to be rife with doping. But there is a strong argument that that is a result of the fact that they've tackled that topic head on. And arguably, there are other sports where doping is as rife, but not as prominent in people's perception. So we have to, I think, match that that educational aspect, that community building aspect, recognizing the profile of what motivates people to seek technical assistance, and match that with our actions that are more the stick. Because we know that there will always be people who know what they're doing and do it because they're seeking to gain an unfair advantage, and we can't use the soft approaches only. So I think it's a multifaceted topic, and it's great to have this opportunity, I think, just to air some of these different nuances.
Yeah, on this point of the educational aspect and the public relations aspect, this is, of course, has a direct parallel in over-the-board chess for many years. We've had many cases just you know, in the past decade or so of false positives or unfounded accusations. I see David Cedric, the arbiter, in the chat mentioning that this may be a greater problem than cheating itself, at least when it comes to over-the-board play, which is perhaps borne out by David Smerdon's survey numbers about the frequency of cheating in over-the-board play as well. Do you, looking back at some of the cases, I mean, there's the sort of Mamedyarov Kurnosov is a famous one. Some cases in where you had players circulating petitions, making accusations either directly or sort of thinly veiled in over-the-board play. Do you see any lessons that we can apply from those cases to the online world as well, where of course scale is a much bigger issue, both in terms of the number of players and games and the potential for cheating?
I think it has to be approached in two different segments. So it's the high stakes, professional play is completely different from the 99.95% of players who are playing chess. So I think we need very, very different approaches in trying to identify players at that very high level and at a kind of a club level or below. So I just wanted to kind of add that.
I also would
Sorry,
like to mention that, sorry, David, I wanted to mention that we have an indicator based on Professor Reagan's work, which is Z-score, and it shows that how data is different from the norm. It shows the deviation, and actually we know that, for example, in a tournament when we don't have many players and we get the score equal to 3, that's actually not normal, but we don't go for these suspicious players. We will go and stay in a safe place, which is like the score equal to 5, which you get it once in 3 million times. So if you z score equal to 5, it's not normal, and it's very odd. So it is very safe that if we receive such data from a player and also compare it with the player's performance, for example, the player has a rating of 2000, but the performance is 2900. These data, we compare all of them together and then decide based on them. So I think we don't go for just false positive and just decide players based on smaller evidence. We go for high evidence and when we are sure about that.
And on Sanjoy's point, also to Salomėja, I want to bring you in. The intuition of grandmasters obviously has some value, but it's difficult to know. Grandmasters can make mistakes as well, and it's difficult to know how much to incorporate that. How much do you think it's valuable to combine the statistical analysis, some kind of threshold-based system for flagging with the human knowledge and experience of players?
Well, it is necessary, and it is already occurring. Not only statistical evidence are taken into account, but also expertise. And during Online Chess Olympiad, this was exactly the case. We were dealing with statistical evidence and with the analysis of games, which was carried out by grandmasters or by other experienced chess players. So it is nothing new, but just recurring back to your previous question about false accusations or manifestly unfounded accusations and what lessons need to be learned, I would like to stress that especially it is important to remember that these accusations have to be formalized. If something is just going on Facebook, on a blog post, on Twitter, etc., this potentially has something to do with the abuse of the freedom of expression. Everyone has a freedom of expression, but also there are limits of this freedom of expression and abuse of it. So false accusation usually is considered as an abuse of freedom of expression, and especially if this is done in informal, in degrading way, in some kind of petition circulating around, going informally to the arbiter, speaking with the player, spreading rumors, etc. So this procedure needs to be formalized. We have post-tournament complaint, we have in-tournament complaint, but wherever or whatever procedure we have, it needs to be followed, because if we do not follow any procedure, this kind of things just may turn into witch hunting, which is very, very undesirable.
Yes. One question I have, David, were you about to say something or no? One question I have on procedures and how much can you, let's say, put into code so that procedures are followed? How can we eliminate some of the subjective elements or the elements that have a high degree of uncertainty? And how do we measure what that level of uncertainty is? I mean, this is something that's interesting even about the statistical analysis, is that because we don't really have much of an insight into what platforms are doing, on a granular basis, it's difficult to know whether or not they're effective, other than to go with what they claim. This goes to transparency as well. While I was involved with the development of the early sort of anti-cheating dashboard of Chess24, which was based on some research from University of Kent, if I recall. I imagine the methodologies are similar, but obviously they have limits, and it's not always easy to explain what those limits are.
No, transparency is the key word here. I think the analogy with doping in sport actually is a useful one. In sports, we have WADA as a overarching authority, and there is transparency in that in trying to combat anti-doping, they will present everything that they are searching for, what is legal and what isn't legal, what has been found in blood tests, what masking agents are being searched for. And it leads to an arms race between cheats and people whose job it is to catch them. We don't have this in chess, and I think this is part of the PR problem. FIDE kicked off some really useful work, I think, with a number of platforms, including ourselves, earlier this year, to try to establish a more unified and cooperative process. But it still has to be opaque, simply because all of the platforms involved are not at the stage where we are ready to commit to allowing people who choose to abuse technical assistance can see what we're looking for. And that means that this issue of transparency will always be there. The most natural thing for an individual or the people around an individual who has been sanctioned for an ethical breach, the most natural thing for those people to do is to deny it vehemently. And that leads to a situation where people don't know what to believe. Are the standards too low? Are they subjective? Is there, and Shohreh came in with a great point about the kind of level to which they take the statistical deviation, which is very safe. But unfortunately, we have this huge transparency gap in chess at the moment. And I don't know how soon we'll be ready to really tackle that in a serious way. Until we do, I feel as if there is always going to be this kind of, I'd say this conflict between those who are doing their level best to try and make the world a better place, and the perception of those who are outside of that process, who don't understand the inner mechanisms of it and don't know what to believe.
And similarly, right now, the platforms have essentially had to invent their own systems, sometimes using some of the same basic research, whether it's from Ken Regan or other studies, but the results of their findings are not being shared or propagated in any way with other platforms. So if you are flagged as potentially using assistance on one platform and are banned, you can still play readily on another without any way for the other platform to know about it, even necessarily, other than through word of mouth. If it's a well-known player or something, I mean, the word gets around. But for the vast majority of players who are flagged as such, there's no communication sharing, and that's a situation that sounds like you see continuing. David, do you, from what I gather from Tornelo, you were looking to create basically a tool for arbiters, a kind of a statistical analysis dashboard that could display results quickly, To what extent then do you rely on this expertise from players, or what is the role for professionals to kind of check what the dashboard is saying?
So we provide what we call a fair play report to arbiters, which is round by round analysis, because I think it's much more important to be engaged as quickly as possible. If you have to wait 24 hours or 48 hours after the fact, by then any consequences that you attempt to bring on the player are no longer effective, because they're not directly correlated to the action that caused them in the first place. So if you can actually jump into straight after they finished a game in round 1 or round 2 and say, hey Macauley, you've played fantastically there, out of your skin really well, your result is fantastic. What I'd like to do is I'd like to supervise you a little bit more closely in the next few games, because at the end of this event, if somebody comes to me and says, oh, Macauley was getting assistance during his games, I as the arbiter would like to be able to support you, and I try and get on the side of the player, and it's no longer a competitive, combative process between the arbiters trying to catch the cheaters and the cheaters trying to get away with it. We're now on the same side as the player, and so we simply provide as much information as we can to the arbiters. Now I agree with Sanjoy that it's a dangerous arms race, that if the players who are maliciously and deliberately attempting to bypass these checks wanted to, it would be child's play to do that when you know what's being looked for, child's play. And the challenge is always that we're dealing with assistance. Unfair assistance is it's about expectations. And so we have to have a baseline expectation for what somebody's going to play like. And if they play within their boundary of expectations, so let's say every player has got a 200 rating point band, either north and south, that they might play at. So you've got a rating of 2000, you might on the day play from 1800 to 2200. You can get assistance to always play at 2200. Now, if you play poker, you'll understand a tiny percentage advantage plays out to an extremely large cash gain over the long term. And so this is, it's not about catching people. It's about building a community of players who trust one another and are satisfied. And I'll just, I'd like to have maybe shed a slightly more positive light than what Shohreh had, in terms of, we have seen some events. We had a 608 player event on Monday and Tuesday, all scholastic players from the ages of 8 to 18. And there was zero evidence of cheating on statistical means. Not one player was anywhere near any sort of threshold. I'm not even talking about a Z score of 3. So there have been examples of large events with lots of players, of people who are maybe psychosocially immature, therefore more likely to give into the temptation of getting assistance. And there has been some success, and that's through, it's through community more so than it is just this verification process afterwards.
Okay, I want to try to involve some of our audience questions a little bit more in this next section, related to what you were just speaking about. One interesting thing that came out of the discussion earlier in the day in the conference was that there seems to be far less cheating among younger children, and I guess that to some extent seems logical, or seems intuitive. But do you have any sense of how how we can build up this expectation in a more systematic way among scholastic chess, or what the differences are between approaching assistance screening in scholastic events versus, let's say, elite events? Anybody feel free to jump in.
I think that's it goes back to David's point about trying to understand and profile, chess players, and understand where cheating arises from. And I'd suggest that there's a correlation between pressure to succeed and unfair means. Anyone who has ever, used an engine unfairly, and even hypothetically, if you think about that scenario, it's a very empty feeling, because it takes the joy of demonstrating your superior understanding of a game, etc., out of the equation, and you've just learned how good your phone's engine is, or whatever it may be. But where there is pressure on performance, and when people are trying to protect their self-image, whether that's the perception of their teachers, their parents, their club, they're representing something, when livelihood and prizes come to the fore, it's that pressure to succeed that I think is going to be let's say, fertile ground for more contraventions. So I think, yes, we can look at what happens and how we catch it, but we could also spend time to consider, are we creating the right environments? Are we creating environments where people are judged for, is there a unnatural situation being created that makes people think that they would rather go through a process that is very empty for themselves in order to demonstrate results for whatever reason?
Yeah, I think scholastic chess is very different from professional, high stakes cash tournaments, and most of the sort of unfair assistance, I think, can be eliminated by having a peer group. We talk about psychosocial immaturity, which is this tendency to behave badly or antisocially online, and there's a number of reasons that people do the wrong thing online, and it's not just in chess. It's bullying and hacking and 1,000 other things, sending inappropriate photos, and kids are particularly vulnerable to those sorts of mistakes. When you can build a community and a peer group of people who are doing the right thing, then that peer group strongly influences especially in that 14 to 21-year-old age group. So and to get a peer group that's influencing in the right direction, you only need to pick out the one or two that are blatant abusers of the system, which is very easy to do with some of the statistical analysis tools that we've already talked about. And then the ones who are doing it more maliciously and cleverly, we can rely on kind of longer term psychological pressure and the ability with multiple interactions to sort of identify people over the longer term. So there are some difficult challenges when somebody's saying, okay, I'm going to perform at the top of my rating range every single tournament and never have a bad day. That's a but that can be caught with sort of longitudinal analysis. But yeah, I think peer group's really important. I think authentic identities, real names. I think immediate feedback. It's like if you're training a dog and the dog pees on the carpet and you tell them off 2 days later, well, it's not going to help. So immediate feedback and and some sort of leadership and conversations and behavior change, conversations that it's about education and education, not just in terms of what's happening, but the impact that it's having on other people and how we're in a community and we're trying to enjoy chess and build a community of people who trust one another. And and every time that somebody does the wrong thing, it's not just impacting that one game, it's impacting the whole community of chess, and the whole game itself is at risk, which I genuinely believe it is. The whole game of chess is at risk from this threat. But I also believe that we have, and we've always had in chess, a very strong community. It is one of the greatest communities of people in the world, and everybody, will, I think, in the long run, pull together and get us through this. And we have seen some success in that. So yeah, I'm on the optimistic side of things.
All right. I want to talk a little bit about the the newer attempts to bring in supervision, also regarding cameras. I remember when the first time I heard about the idea of having a webcam to discourage cheating was actually back in 2011 with the CEO of a company called Shindig Events, which had tried a little chess platform as a demo. And that was the first time where, I mean, it was now feasible to imagine that every player had a webcam, but the basic premise was just simply that if you knew you were being watched, you are less likely to cheat. And I think that does have a lot of evidence from sociology and research in various fields. I wonder if you have any sense about how that can be known to be working, or to what extent that is an effect that works in chess and in online chess specifically, rather than just a guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to mention that in the tournaments that we use camera, the number of cheaters actually reduced meaningfully. And it's really a huge, important tool for us. And actually, it's not the only one, because microphone is as important as camera. So when players have their microphone on, actually, it gives us the opportunity to make sure that they don't have extra people on their playing hall to give them advice. So these together, and also another matter is share screen as well, because we ask players to share their screen, so we will make sure that they don't have any other programs on their computer. And as well as sometimes if we are not sure about that, we can do the task manager check as well to check if what programs they have, and check all of them. And actually, there was another point that I think it is missing, is that some platforms collect other data that we didn't discuss about that. So when we have some suspicious players, and we are not sure about their Z score, I mean, it's like 3, and we cannot 100% say that this player is cheating, we get other data from the platform, like click pattern, or if the players are switching between tabs as well. So, or maybe some platforms have other data rather than this, which I'm not informed about that. But these are together with this statistical reports, all of them helps us to reach to a final conclusion. But to avoiding cheating, I would say that yes, camera is very helpful, as long as other things.
And I think that this comes back to David's point about the distinction between the different levels of tournament. So for the Champions Chess Tour with a 1.5 million prize pool, we can, draw up contracts with the players where there are 5 different cameras with different angles. If there are prizes for a tournament, it's reasonable to expect that people install software that will capture client-side activity. But I think the challenge for online chess platforms is to be a supportive arena that will support the boom that we're seeing in online chess, and we have to balance that with. We want to make sure that people have a level playing field at all levels, but there are many people who feel deeply uncomfortable about having software installed onto their machine just to play a friendly online game of chess. So I think our responses have to be kind of proportionate to the risk that there is kind of prizes at stake, etc. And we have to use different means for those different levels of online chess.
So in an event like that, where you're playing rapid, of course, is it also part of the regulations that you require the players to remain in view of these cameras at all times? Because obviously that right away, no matter what you have at their immediate playing area, if they can get them walk away from the board, then that's all for naught in a sense.
Yeah, it has to be taken case by case, because there are always examples of players who have reasons why they have to depart for brief periods at certain times, etc. And these are understood through discussion with them, and the arbiters are aware of those situations, and so on and so forth. But the main point is that we have a strong ongoing dialogue with all players, not just the elite, but anyone who's going to participate in the Champions Chess Tour and the parallel tours that are going to be developed. You have to build that relationship to understand any circumstances. It means that someone may not be able to be static in front of the camera at all times, 100% guaranteed. So.
Yeah, and then you obviously also have a problem of trying to scale up those kinds of systems to lower level events or larger events, Opens, Olympiads, and so on. The process that Shohreh was articulating sounds very labor intensive. I mean, there are a lot of different data streams coming in, but they're all, at the moment, it sounds like still being evaluated by humans. So there's a question of whether all of this data can somehow be processed in a more automated fashion, and whether the quality of it is sufficient to enable that to occur. What do you, looking ahead, in the coming years, what do you think are the prospects for trying to pool data in such a way that it can both scale in terms of number of participants and also, yeah, quality of data that's feeding those algorithms?
Yeah, fundamentally, it comes down to investment, because we have as I was referring to earlier, in the age of AI and learning algorithms, if you look at parallel fields in business, it's possible to codify very complex situations and scenarios. We live in a big data age, but in order to refine the methods and processes, there is no shortcut. We have to determine how important this is for us as an online community. And if we consider it to be critical and even existential, then there must be the level of investment that reflects that.
Yeah, actually, I had the same discussion with David some time ago, because in universities, for example, in England, they don't use Zoom. In chess tournaments, we use Zoom, but they use some other softwares like Protector, which can collect eye movements and other things. And also players should show their ID before, because we don't know players. And if someone else is playing instead of somebody else from another country, we cannot identify that. But this movement can help if we go to some other levels and use this softwares like Protector or other equivalents. So David, we had a conversation with David, and he was interested to improve these things on Tornelo.
Okay, I've seen a couple of questions in the chat about the feasibility of applying online cheating bans to offline events. This obviously quickly escalates to potential legal issues as well, which is sort of outside the scope of our discussion. But on the other hand, in terms of establishing trust and in terms of establishing norms, it makes a certain amount of sense that online sanctions, at least if they can be trusted enough, do carry over in not just to other platforms, but perhaps into offline events. Yeah, have you given any thought to that, or what do you think is the sort of best practice that we could outline in the coming year?
Yeah, maybe it is my field of competence. Actually, we already can see within the chat that the discussion was far from being unanimous or very with so much consent. There are very controversial ideas behind this topic, but mostly what is reached and what is supposed to be the rule in 2021 is that online sanctions can be extended to over-the-board sanctions, but it is not an obligatory recommendation for the ethics or fair play panel or whatever will decide. It is the word is may, but not must, or it is like flexible formulation, but the discretion is left, but not a necessity. So this is the consensus that was reached. It was far from easy to reach that, but the provision at least now sounds as I told, that it may be extended, but it is not that it have to be extended.
Yeah. Also on the question of what you can do in elite events versus what can scale, there are a couple of issues. I mean, I think there's some reason to expect that having an alternate camera that can see the room, having things like the audio on, are certainly going to be helpful. But yeah, then how do you create a trade-off? How do you find the balance between the comfort of the players and the technical ability of the players to participate? And similarly, as let's see, Peter Bielik mentions that privacy issues, things like the European Union's General Data Privacy Regulation may quickly come to the fore as well in terms of transparency. You can't necessarily share anything that could be considered private in any kind of public forum, which limits your options to build trust in the system in that way.
Yeah, and this is the challenge, because I used the water analogy before, and that's only possible because we're talking about professional sport. Whenever we are talking about voluntary amateur participation, then there are individual rights that must be respected. So it comes back to the things David was talking about. And I have to say, David, it made me so happy to hear you report that tournament that you had recently with zero evidence of cheating, even at the lower thresholds. But it has to be about yes, catching the methods used, but also building that influencing community. And actually, I think this work comes from the top down. I mean, Salomėja and I have been on a number of different forums together, and we have FIDE that is able to work with us and give very strong and powerful signals. And both Emil Satovsky and Arkady have been very supportive of what we can do together, not only to create due process, but also to communicate the right messages from the top from top to bottom. And I think that's definitely part of the solution.
About the camera also, having one camera is not a big deal because most players have one laptop which has a camera. But we know that second camera is not easy, and in most tournaments we are applying one camera. But hopefully now we can get the result of a screening test by ChemRegon day by day. So we know that which players are suspicious, so we can ask them individually to provide the second camera.
Yeah, I think back to Sanjoy's point that it has to be horses for courses. You can't ask an 1100 player playing in their local club event on a Thursday night to have 2 cameras and microphones and all these other things. But I also don't think that's necessary. Just when it comes to supervision, the fact that you can supervise if you need to is more than enough, and that will give you an 80% solution. And I think that's in most cases, that's okay. At the professional level, if you're playing for $1 million prize fund, it has to be 100% right. But for the 99.95% of chess that's played in communities around the world, we do have to take into account, we had 1,134 players playing online in India. 95% of them are playing on their phone because they don't have a laptop. And they can't use their phone with a camera at the same time. Like Zoom's just not doing that. So, there have to be community-based ways that we achieve our goal, which is to build a community of players who trust one another online. And if you've achieved that, if we could say, hey, that tournament, everybody trusted one another, everyone had a great experience, everybody's coming back next time, and somebody in that tournament had unfair assistance, do you care? Because we've achieved the objective that we're looking for. Okay, if it's the World Championships, yes, you do care. But at your local club, if somebody has got a little bit of assistance, they've played at 1600 instead of at 1550, and everybody believes in the system, everybody's happy with the process, everyone enjoyed themselves, and everyone's coming back again next time, then I think we've achieved our goal, which is you've got a community of players who trust one another, who've had a good experience playing chess online, and chess will continue. As soon as everything's about catching the cheaters, you build this emotional energy, this negative vibe around the tournaments where nobody could possibly enjoy themselves because there's always suspicion and fear. So I'd like to see the language being turned around from all the organisers and arbiters who are listening to today. You know, talk about things in light of what you want to see happen. You know, speak positively. This is what we want to see. This is the positive side of things, because you'll just create energy, and the way that people are thinking will be completely different. And when you achieve that position where everyone's trusting one another, kind of don't rock the boat. Like let's not try and find problems. And if there's a little bit of it going on, well, you know what? In society, there's a little bit of graffiti. But as long as society feels safe and there's generally not too much major crime, then we're okay, right? So this is what we want to try and do, is create a society where this is managed. And I think the idea that we're trying to, or ever going to be able to eliminate it is, is probably a little naive to think that we're going to eliminate it. And you know, that's kind of my final view.
All right, interesting. So the question is, yeah, how much engine assistance can be tolerated, or how much is acceptable before it crosses some threshold to being really problematic from a sporting standpoint? Obviously there's going to be some kind of a scale, the importance of the events, what are the incentives involved, but also this is going to be a difficult thing to try to draw some lines, and you will have to do that, I imagine, to be able to create procedures that everybody accepts. You know, to say something like, well, if the prize fund is above X, or if the average rating of the event is above Y. Is there any consensus as yet about what would make sense in different contexts that you've seen in meetings on these topics?
Yeah, if I can come in there, I just want to underscore David's point on respect, Macauley. I think it's slightly missed the point to talk about an acceptable level of abuse, if you like, because I think the broader point that I wholeheartedly support that David was making was that if you look at this period of 8 months, one of the things that I found most painful is seeing the level of suspicion and accusation that's happened, like in social media channels. You know, a number of national leagues and events and tournaments that I've been part of, and seeing the level of emotive language that's going on is hurting us, and it's hurting our game, and it's turning chess players away. And so it's not about an quote unquote acceptable level of cheating. We will continue to have a process that will continue to analyze what is happening in fact, but we also need to win over the faith, the faith that the chess community has in online chess, and that's partly through, I think Salomėja was, I think it might have been Shohreh was talking about individual responsibility, you know, particularly in communicating. We all want to believe that our teammates, our people we know, our children are honest, but we have to be very, very careful before we escalate language, whether that's to attack or to defend.
Yeah, obviously I was being deliberately provocative with my framing, but nevertheless, you will have to have some kind of standards as to, you know, both to establish thresholds of evidence and to establish what events qualify or should qualify for various degrees of enforcement or degrees of measurement or supervision. And yeah, I mean, it's a practical question, and I recognize there's no real answer yet, but it's one that I guess it would be probably better if individual organizers didn't have to approach this problem afresh each time. If we had some kind of established guidelines that could be accepted through some kind of consensus building process.
In terms of standardizing, sort of, if the prize pool is X, then measures Y will be signed up to. Maybe that's part of the future. You know, I don't know, but you know, just to make that general point that, you know, I think we're aware that this has been a kind of almost like a test period, and the conclusions and the processes that come out of it will probably be more codified and more uniform and more parallel and across platform than they have been in this period, no doubt.
Actually, I also would like to react to that paradoxical question in a way, but in sports law sense, it is not paradoxical at all, because, for example, we have different thresholds in the context of doping, when some substance is just 10 nanograms, it is tolerable, but if it is 15, it is not tolerable. So it sounds like an absurd story, but it is not at all absurd. And within chess, it's a bit more difficult to establish various scenarios and various degrees of cheating, but we already can imagine one very simple scenario. For example, when kid is playing chess at some platform and using a book only for learning theory. So to say, only for educational purposes, but after 10 moves, he or she already closes the book. So, and I see some kind of shift of perception, because 10 years ago, I guess that at least we who are already kind of selective people, we would not say that this behavior is necessarily bad, wrong, but now we probably would say that it is wrong. Maybe not 100%, but still the shift changes and the fair play standards change. So various degrees are also have to be tackled and dealt in the current spirit of current standards, which are undoubtedly higher than we were, for example, 10 years ago. So this is the simple example can show. Of course, I am not provoking to make a survey of us who is for, who is against, for example, but in any case, we can perceive some kind of marginal behavior that can both fall under cheating and at the same time at the strategy of playing, or at least for a strategy for learning to play chess.
Let me try to frame not so much in terms of norms and peer pressure, but also something that David Smurden mentioned earlier, also in incentives. Could you imagine, for example, a situation where in some events now you have a fair play award, but it's usually just kind of something that the organizers add to recognize a player that they regard as being, particularly stand up. It varies from event to event. There's no clear standard. It's really much just a judgment call and just something that they add into the prize giving in some events. But could we see, for example, a development of some kind of online play reputation score where your experience playing in events that have higher degrees of supervision, where the games are more closely scrutinized, sort of adds to your fair play score, and that there are incentives backing the building of a fair play score over time. This is something that I've been thinking about for a while, and I wonder if you guys have any thoughts on such an idea.
Look, I really like that idea. Oh, sorry, Sanjoy. I think what we need to try and do is be on the same side as the players. We don't want to be fighting against them, but we want to say, well, actually, we're doing this for you, and if we could provide something like that where you could say, okay, well, here's a way that you can build your reputation over time and build your fair play rating or whatever it might be. I'd like to get to a situation where you can actually say to somebody, and we've had this in events in Australia, where I've removed a player from the event, knowing that they were probably playing fairly, but I was able to have the conversation with that person and say, look, because because of your results, we think you're probably okay, and it's way below the threshold that Shohreh would have at a FIDE, official World Championship event. But we need to protect the integrity of the tournament, and I hope that we get to a point one day where some people might even say, look, that's fine, take me down, because I know I've played really well this tournament, and if it means that you can have a lower threshold and catch more people, I'm happy to be sacrificed, in the good of the community. So, I'd like to see what can we do that we're on the same side as the players, so the players are willing to support us as organisers and us as arbiters, and there can be some community policing, there can be some community support. So yeah, anyway, that whatever we can do to get on the same side as the players, so we're not fighting against them all the time. Sorry, Sanjoy.
Yeah, I was smiling, Macauley, because actually you'd hit upon one of that there are many creative product ideas that are being kind of talked about at the moment, and David actually touched on another similar one. One approach that has been discussed has been around, if you think of again a comparison with football, if you simulate and win a penalty, you may get, or try to win a penalty, you may get a second yellow card and be sent off, but it doesn't have the same opprobrium that cheating has in chess. Now, this is a double-edged sword. One approach is to allow a chess community to accept a limited sanction that has less of a stigma to it than the cheating label. But it's a double-edged sword, because what you don't want to do is create a mindset where people will try to cheat because they see it as professionalism or part of the sport. So, in terms of what you explicitly called out around, ratings, and that it might be configurable, that you don't want to sort of play with players of a certain bandwidth for that score. That's been discussed. There are lots of creative ideas that actually, one of the difficulties that I have as a product manager is that it's not purely my decision here. I need the consensus of the chess community. I might think, or even Chess24 might think something's a great idea, or even commercially viable. But there's a kind of bigger story here, and that's the health of the chess community. And so we have to kind of understand what is acceptable, what is considered the direction we want to go in, and so on and so forth.
Okay, we have about another 10 minutes before we should start wrapping up. So if I saw there were 64 participants a moment ago, although that's been up to about 80. But if you have any more questions for our panel, now would be a good time to get those into the chat. And then we'll just have some closing thoughts. Now, is there any of these ideas that that you can talk about being put into practice? And another big question that I have in terms of the incentives again is regarding the process sharing. I mean, if we establish some kind of guidelines and we have the goal of having a certain amount of transparency, and yet there's this similar conundrum where a lot of the guidelines that are actually being implemented on individual events have to be kept somewhat opaque, so as not to encourage people finding workarounds for them. There's a little bit of a contradiction there, and how do we kind of resolve that? Because I think clearly there's a sense that if all of the disparate groups didn't have to reinvent the wheel and could be working together and sharing information, that would make the whole effort more effective.
Yeah, I could not agree more, and I think that's the main thing that I think we need more work around. As I say, sort of all of the platforms have had discussions both with FIDE and cross-platform discussions, I think there is more scope for us to understand what we want to do, how we want to do it, what level of transparency we can offer, what level of transparency it is incumbent on us to provide, what standard processes look like. And the only way these matters can be moved forward is through dialogue between FIDE and the platforms. And we've had a number of initiatives that have been taken forward in the last 7-8 months that haven't come to their natural fruition yet. But I think this is definitely, you know, what needs to continue for I think the broader community to be satisfied that there isn't. You might disagree with individual elements of process, but you're satisfied that the chess community and the online community has a handle on the topic that is clear, that is understood, and that people feel comfortable around.
Anyone else want to chime in on that point? Looking to the chat.
I think I agree with Sanjoy. There's an opportunity for FIDE to show some real leadership in this space, and to, you know, to set the tone and to coordinate between all the platforms, because I think all the platforms, you know, every platform founder, every platform employee loves chess, and they have the best interests of chess at heart. And so I think that, you know, we're in a kind of a unique commercial situation where there's multiple platforms that are all willing to work with each other and work with FIDE to you know, achieve an outcome. But I don't think any one platform wants to stand up and say, okay, this is what everybody should do. That has to come from FIDE.
Okay, so argument there for a sort of a institutional centralized approach in terms of forming guidelines.
I might
guidelines.
Okay,
Sorry,
I might
Salomėja.
tell from FPL's perspective, of course, we cannot form guidelines on online chess. Actually, it strictly speaking, it does not fall under our jurisdiction at all. It might fall since 2021, but until now it hasn't fallen. So, but in any case, and as FIDE president told us this morning, online regulations are already confirmed, adopted at the council. So there will be a legal document obligatory to all to follow, and this will probably be the main document on online chess and unified documents. So it will not be about separate procedures of different online platforms, but a unified document which is mandatory to follow. And of course, after this main document, then it should follow some commentaries or guidelines, but we have only the first step so far. So it is a bit early to speak about what will be next.
Yeah,
When do you expect that document to be published?
Yes, of course. Actually, it is already within circles of respective commissions and task panels, and today or yesterday, okay, probably yesterday, it was at the council. So it will probably be published on January, but of course it is not me who will publish, but at least logically thinking, it should be on January.
Yeah,
Shohreh,
I also would like to mention that, yeah, FIDE has a task force commission, and they worked in this document that Salomėja mentioned. But I personally feel that there should have been some representative from platforms there when they wanted to write this document, because there was no one from main platform or any platform. It was just people. So people from commission, so they write things based on their want, but maybe each platform has its limitation, its programming, and maybe they don't want to apply some of them. So yeah, I think this was the negative part of the case, but the positive part is that at least we have some rules.
Yeah, if I might quickly just comment on that. I was scribbling down actually when Arkady was calling out the kind of the role of FIDE, and particularly the second point about FIDE should partner with the market. And you know, all of the conversations that I had with Emil in particular this year, and Salomėja and others, the platforms are certainly involved, but there is that commercial delicacy between, you know, having to have or trying to have a discussion with multiple parties that have their own willingness to go certain steps of the way, and so often those discussions have broken off so that it can be between FIDE and a particular platform and so on. But I wouldn't want the picture to be painted that you know, FIDE is going in one direction and platforms are going in another. That's certainly not my experience this year.
Yeah, I can give an example, for example, because I've seen the document. For example, it says that draw offer must be written, but you need the sign of draw offer. I don't know if it is going to happen in all platforms. Are they going to change their programming because of this regulation? This is just one simple, very simple example. There are many other things that applying them needs programming, and if platforms are going to do that, and why they should follow this.
All right. Well, this certainly sounds like an unresolved question, but we'll have some new guidance coming out to further the discussion going forward. I want to thank you all very much for participating, and all of you for watching. I see a lot of people who stuck through the whole session, so thanks to the audience as well.